really think this is worth the risk?
I do. We do not know our enemy. How can we hope to stop something that we do not understand?
Ever since mankind first looked up at the stars, they have wondered what lies beyond.
Why haven't I played Xcom, Enemy Unknown? To be honest, I'm an eclectic gamer. I have everything in my collection, from old school Nintendo platformers to what are essentially text-based adventure games with pictures. In the midst of all this chaos lies my treasured strategy games. Having grown up on games like Command & Conquer, Fire Emblem, and Endless Space, I thought I was reasonably well versed in the heights of the genre. Then this trailer hit. Then the game released, to a torrent of positive reviews, and I had to have it. I went to my nearest neighborhood game store, plumped down $40, and walked out of there with some of the coolest box art ever. The sleepless nights soon piled up on top of each other as I was drawn into the atmosphere of dread and unimaginable horror that the game excels at producing. If previous strategy games, to my knowledge, had emphasized only the relatively sterile mechanics of attrition, i.e. you fling your units at the enemy forces until the more numerous or more powerful force emerges superior, Xcom emphasizes scarcity, luck, and the sheer terror of the unknown in war. Let's dive into Xcom, Enemy Unknown.
What are they?
Whatever they are, they nearly took out a squad of our best soldiers. If you'll excuse me, doctors, the commander is waiting in mission control.
You play as a nameless commander, tasked with defending the world from an alien invasion. You command under the auspices of the Xcom Project, an international organization dedicated to the defense of Earth. You are supplied with 3 key supporting characters: a world-weary engineer, a super serious scientist, and a tactical officer. The story in this game mostly revolves around these 3 characters and their interplay off of you, each other, and the various revelations and discoveries made during the course of events. These discoveries are made by the soldiers at your command, and they are more involved in the actual events than you are. But before we get ahead of ourselves, the alien invasion and the reasons for it is loaded with mystery. As you progress through the campaign, the introduction of newer enemies, threats, and technologies provide endless questions. Who is the leader of this invasion force? Why are they attacking? The nebulous mass of the plot actually becomes one of the game's main providers' attention, at least for the first playthrough. Because you have no idea of the enemy's capabilities, motives, or chain of command, the slow unveiling of the Shroud of Mystery feels like a desperate fight for clarity, not just for survival. It's damn near masterful at first glance. Unfortunately, the story suffers from a few bugbears that slowly diminish that aura. For instance, though it may seem that you are the centerpiece of the drama, it really is the supporting characters that shoulder the burden of the plot. The story progresses roughly like this: detect enemy force, send Sky Ranger, find enemy force, vague comment from scientist engineer.
That alien is unusually human in its appearance. They could be using it as an infiltration unit of some kind. I'd recommend capturing it for further analysis.
Engage and/or defeat enemy forces. Cutscene. Boy, those cutscenes. Those cutscenes usually proceed in this fashion as well. Engineer and/or TAC officer disagrees with scientist's grand declaration of amazing discovery. Scientist activates device or gains their approval. Vague philosophizing from engineer and scientist, and it's back to the races.
It is currently unclear how or...
Perhaps that's because this is outside your field of expertise, Doctor.
The sheer carousel operation of the plot undermines some of the dramatic tension that the rest of the game tries to maintain. That's not even the worst part. Because the game relies on cutscenes to move the plot forward, they have to carry the load of plausibility and narrative tension to at least an adequate degree, and the game simply doesn't do that. It tries, believe me, it does. But the oddly sterile nature of the game betrays the lack of human emotions at play. Spoilers! So, the ending neatly encapsulates everything wrong about this game and its story, so I'm going to do a bit of my cynical evisceration for your amusement. So, without spoiling too much, you beat the final enemy in the game, and the final cutscene rears its head. So, I had spent the majority of the late stages in the game training one of my favorite soldiers for the plot-important hero position. You actually need to train a specific soldier for the final mission to trigger. And now she was the emphasis of the action. As I sat down and grabbed some popcorn, the character pulled out one of the most cliche moments I've ever seen. Noticing an enemy weapon about to explode the whole world, she heroically pushes her squad mates out of the room and sacrifices herself. My problem isn't with the fact that the very act of her sacrifice was lazy writing in its finest, well, at least the execution of it. My problem is that the story relied on cliches almost exclusively to tell its tale and try to get us to feel emotions for randomly generated numbers. Poorly. Spoilers end here. The overuse of cliches and well-worn tropes hinders any sense of wonder at the events occurring, and actively hinders any emotional involvement beyond the tension that is the game's specialty. When the human characters interact with you only in vague declarations of moral ambiguity, token congratulatory gestures, and clinically sterile science speak, it is hard to identify with any of the tropes passing as characters, though I do give a shout out to Dr. Volwin, mostly through the excellent performance of her voice actress.
How'd it go, Doctor?
Better than expected. Before the creature expired, I was able to extract some new information from it.
The randomly generated soldiers are another point of concern. Their personalities and appearance can all be customized by you. What this means is that none of these soldiers comes across as anything more than vaguely human number stacks, with absolutely nothing that makes them seem human, though the game tries valiantly to give them human traits in the gameplay department, mainly by having them be prone to panic, missing at point-blank range, and just generally being annoying as all hell. You are essentially forced to apply human personalities onto them like an ineffective sunscreen that slides off when you forget to reapply it. Because some of these soldiers become important to the plot, the game is telling you to care for them, without providing enough of a human foundation to prevent the whole facade from collapsing. Xcom European Union fails to deliver a compelling story because of its over-reliance on the player to infuse its soldiers with dramatic heft. Because the plot is largely driven by the player's actions, it seems to assume that you should carry the emotional burdens by yourself as well. For that reason alone, the game's story falls short, which is a shame, because the game delivers enough on the gameplay front to be a compelling experience in its own right.
Just got hot in here.
Taken care of. Missed.
Xcom is a turn-based strategy game in the vein of Fire Emblem, except with heavier firepower. It's class-based, with a heavy emphasis on stats and upgradable abilities. You can deploy high-powered snipers, zealous assault units, and heavy infantry to the battlefield and control them with an intricacy lacking in its real-time brethren. The gameplay is thus where the game makes its strongest impression, and I'm about to tell you why. This is a hard game, almost ludicrously hard. If you are careless and prone to Zerg rushing, you will get your butt handed to you. Unlike other strategy games where elements of rock, paper, scissors like to rear their ugly heads and give you a discernible advantage or nerf, every single enemy is equally lethal to all your soldiers in Xcom, and the game uses every opportunity it can to remind you of that. Because of that, my strategy for clearing most maps became one of caution, slowly advancing my troops in incremental steps for fear of triggering yet another group of aliens. This is where the signature tension and dread of the franchise comes into play, and it's awesome, for the most part. The game provides extra jolts every now and then with the introductions of newer enemies and objectives as your soldiers' ranks and tech levels increase, meaning that the game's difficulty always keeps you on your toes, even when you have your soldiers equipped with the best weaponry and armor. Speaking of, your soldiers are ranked into randomly selected classes: snipers, assault units, heavies, and support. From there you have access to a skill tree, where you select the techniques and specialties of each class. Every option has a tremendous effect on the effectiveness of a soldier in battle, though there are some choices which simply don't give you any real benefits when compared to the other choices available. You can equip your squad with weapons and armor that you have researched in the labs and built in the foundry, or acquired from the field. The research options can yield some exotic weaponry and armor options. You can even recruit adorable robots to go into battle with you. Once you are actually in combat, you get to experience the dark thrills. Being turn-based, this game allows you the time to think through your movements and strategies, and actually makes this game surprisingly well suited for the console, by the way, giving an air of finesse that many RTS games lack. Your soldiers have action points to spend on movements, abilities, and attacking. Your reserves of action points are low, so every move you make has to be deliberate, or else the game will murder you and your squad.
Missed the target.
I can't think of another game where I simultaneously dreaded and gleefully anticipated the next enemy encounter, eager to show off my tactical acumen. When I did locate my foes, I often had to pull off several death-defying battle maneuvers to keep my squad alive, the success of which often prompted fist pumps. These triumphs, nestled in with the blood-curdling anticipation of enemy encounters, were all that was needed for the game to strut its stuff. But wait, there's more! That rather thrilling core of the game is supplemented by the managing of your base, finances, and weaponry. After choosing a continent for its gameplay benefit as the location of your headquarters, you get to decide what to build, what weapons and tech to research, and what soldiers you will keep or give the boot. This management aspect of the game is surprisingly well done, and almost as engrossing as the main combat missions. The little details of where to construct certain buildings, what research to embark on with your limited resources, and where to transfer desperately needed satellites and interceptor aircraft make this compelling stuff. The various nations involved in the Xcom project all need to be safeguarded, lest they be overtaken with panic and abort the council, stupidly, and take their funding and benefits with them. This constant need to keep the world calm and balance that with the accomplishments of your missions and the safety of your soldiers is one reason why the game has such a high reputation. But, me being me, I have to poke some holes in this game for the benefit of whatever poor sap needs to find out about this game in the future. So let's start with this. This is one of the most frustratingly buggy games in history. It's not that any of the bugs flat out crash the game, or distort the visuals or audio to painful degrees, it's the fact that the bugs manage to stack the difficulty even further against you. I've encountered bugs that prevent me from moving my soldiers to safe spots from enemy fire, I've seen my soldiers blasted through walls, I've even seen saved game files mysteriously vanish only to turn up somewhere in the middle of the vast sea of autosaves and save scums that had accumulated. For a AAA game, this is nearly inexcusable, especially now that the game has been out for well over a year without patches to fix these controller smashing bugs. For another, the game's very design means that you'll come across some nasty surprises, from enemies that spawn in the middle of your army after you've used up all your action points, to a sudden unveiling of a horde of super tough drones and mutons, to the random number generator shenanigans that never fail to make me wish death to the gameplay designers. I am aware that I can't win every time in a game, but when the game itself already features such frustrating bugs and has a nasty habit of overwhelming you, it becomes a trial of fire, and quite frankly, I save scummed like a bitch. If you aren't of the mind to exploit saved game files, then the game provides an Iron Man challenge for the more sadistic of you. But the fact that a lot of the game's more nasty spikes will likely wipe out a good portion of your elite soldiers, and without fail, all of your less experienced soldiers couldn't hit the broadside of a barn at point blank range, means that it became a habit to simply reload a save whenever things got dicey. I don't need to replay the entire 30-minute mission just because you spawned a million aliens on my flanks. I got stuff to do, man. Moments like these mean that I can't simply say that the gameplay is top-notch. It's still thrillingly constructed, but it needed work, and that work wasn't provided. The grand element of tension and release is there, buried underneath tides of frustration and bugs, but you just need to power through a lot of the BS to experience it to the fullest.
Central, you getting all this?
Xcom Evolving Underwear opts for an art style that evokes classic science fiction tropes and shows off some impressive attention to detail with your weaponry and equipment. The Xcom HQ itself is brimming with life and the mechanisms that help you fight the war. The environments in which you fight the enemy range from heavily damaged cities, gigantic enemy bases and UFOs, to serene forests. These environments are nicely detailed, though after a while they start to blend together, especially the forest and UFO missions. The vast majority of the game will be spent fighting in absolute darkness, as if to emphasize the crushing weight of the enemy forces and the fog of war. The enemy aliens themselves run the gamut of pop culture depictions of aliens, from the Grey Men of legend to the Thin Men of Slender, from towering brutes to ethereal mutants. It should be noted how much many of these concepts seem to be ripped off from other games. Halo's influences in particular rears its head through the aforementioned brutes and ethereals, which are based heavily off of concept art of Halo's Rogues Gallery. See the art of Halo for proof. It's unfortunate to see that the enemy aliens are nothing more than uninspired rehashes of familiar concepts, as the rest of the art design helps mold a deliciously atmospheric experience.
Dead end.
Michael McCann's score is one of the finest electronic soundtracks in recent memory. Arpeggiated synths collide with choral vocals and bombastic percussion to create a thrilling experience all on their own. Some of the main bass themes in particular help set the tone in a way that's awe-inspiring. If his work on Deus Ex Human Revolution is any indicator, then Michael is going to be around for a very, very long time. The sound design itself is actually one of the highlights of the game. Subtle alien growls will emanate from the darkness around your soldiers. The low hum of your bass emphasizes the loneliness and isolation of fighting an interstellar war. The quiet ambiances on the battlefield serving as a calm before the storm. This is top-notch work. The little details can often carry a game if done right, and Xcom holds its own with the best in the industry.
No longer a threat.
Xcom Enemy Unknown is not a great game. It's not a bad game either though. The moments of triumph and excitation I had with it were almost always followed by a mission-ending bug or RNG moment that guaranteed doom for my squad. The art design and plot are uninspired rehashes of familiar themes and concepts, but the music, sound design, and the vast majority of the gameplay offer up an experience of dread like no other. If you're up for a game that'll test your patience, your strategic and tactical skills, then XCOM Enemy Unknown may scratch that itch.
Jackson County. Means we're close to Jackson City, right?
Should be more than a few miles.
You ready to see dear old brother?
I'm just ready to get there.
You nervous?
I don't know what I'm feeling.